several presentations in our BIMP EAGA senior officials meeting and conferences. At last, we came to this realization of our presentation of the future BIMP EAGA Center of Excellence in Agricultural Modernization. That will be presented tomorrow together with the presentations of the other member countries. Welcome to the Philippines. On behalf of the city government of Davao and the people of Mindanao and Palawan and the whole of the Philippines, we welcome our delegates.
Thank you, Director Leon. And to give us the opening remarks, may we call on the Regional Director of the Department of Trade and Industry Region 11 and the head of the Philippine EAGA Trade and Investment Facilitation Cluster, Ms. Maria Belinda Kiran.
At the outset, let me congratulate the BIMP EAGA Sociocultural and Education Cluster, in particular the HRD Working Group and the Philippine Organizing Agency, the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, for initiating this first ever BIMP EAGA Technical Vocational Education Training Forum here in Davao City. Indeed, this is a laudable and highly relevant initiative as we bring BIMP EAGA to the next level of its development journey, especially in the area of capacitating our people through human resource development initiatives, moving onward to harmonizing skills and skill standards and protocols, and eventually forging a mutual recognition agreement. This shall
Secretary Mamundyong is not here with us at this moment due to an equally important commitment. Let me just read Secretary Mamundyong's message. I am very happy to address all of you today in this very important and pioneering conference on TVET in the BIMP EAGA. Fellow workers in the government and guests, good morning. As you may all know, the Philippines is under a new administration, and I was just appointed by President Rodrigo Duterte to take the lead in steering the country's technical vocational education and training through TESDA, which he sees as a very important tool in pushing for development in the countryside and in his poverty alleviation fast. The President, who hails from Davao City, you may have seen how he transformed the city into a bustling metropolis that is very keen on poverty alleviation and in developing the capacities of the people to emancipate them from poverty and to eventually contribute to nation building. As TVET stakeholders ourselves, we all know how the role of TVET as a source of skills, knowledge, and technology that drives productivity in knowledge-based economies is being given high importance in many countries.
First of all, allow me to congratulate TESDA, 11 Regional Director, of course, Gus, and his team for successfully organizing this forum. I am extremely proud of your achievement today and for continuously taking on the challenge of the Philippine lead focal agency, BIMP EAGA Socio-Cultural and Education, or SCE cluster. You know that during one of our meetings of the ministers, the Philippines was the first to recommend that this cluster should become a portal of BIMP EAGA, as we did for environment. Today's event can be considered a first and a fit for the sub-region's technical vocational education and training, or the TVET sector. Many of you here may recall that almost 2 years ago, we concluded the BIMP EAGA TVET Leaders Forum, also here in Davao, which with so much hope and aspirations for the development of this sector. Your presence here today manifests your commitment for this sector. This is the kind of commitment that will lead to building partnerships that will bolster our efforts in cultivating internationally accredited workforce across the sub-region.
And to give the certificate of recognition to our distinguished visitors, may we call on Director Gaspar Leona to us, please. Another certificate of recognition is given to Director Rosana Ordaneta, the Deputy Director General for Policies and Planning of the TESDA Central Office. Trade and Industry 11 and the head of the Philippine EAGA Trade and Investment Facilitation Cluster. Please welcome our first speaker for this plenary session, Director Romeo M. Montenegro.
This presentation will actually incorporate what is supposed to be presented by the Asian Development Bank in terms of how it looked at the direction for ASEAN economy and where and as to whether or not the jobs that we are preparing for the burgeoning economy actually would match the kind of direction we're looking at. And zeroing on how we looked at economy and the landscape shaping up within a smaller sub-regional cooperation, which is Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, East ASEAN Growth Area, or BIMP EAGA. But first, let's look at how is ASEAN shaping up today, how it is, or how is it influencing most of the governments of the 10 countries in terms of strategic direction for economy and policy shifts of the governments, taking into account the realities that are occurring within the 10 countries. ASEAN is very much progressing tremendously in the last 10 years. We have never seen such an enormous growth in many parts of the world than what ASEAN region has accomplished in the last 10, in the last 15 years. And therefore, we have to look at the opportunities and the corresponding challenges. Roads are not always paved with milk and honey. ASEAN. I think that's how sub-regional cooperations and delegates from sub-regional institutions would have to look at the situating themselves in the larger context of the ASEAN region. And therefore, understanding whether or not our government policies are aligning itself to these realities that are happening now in ASEAN. Are our activities, programs, align themselves to the realities we looked at within ASEAN?
Technical Education and Skills Development of the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, TESDA, Executive Director Elmer K. Talavera. A round of applause, please.
My task for today is to disturb you on a very pressing issue of common, international, and global concern. That of everyone, us, you and I, mandated to return to the future the resources we borrowed from the past and from today, that is sustainable development. Would any one of you want any one of these? Anyone who wants skin cancer or hunger? Either you die of it or you live with it. And would you know that these are causes that you and I are culprits of? You and I are part of the root causes. Use air fresheners, fire extinguishers, foams in our beds, refrigerators, inhalers, air conditioners, cleaning solvents. So we are in a fix. We are trying to solve a problem which you and I are culprits of. TESDA has since then ensured that all the training regulations that it promulgates are environment-wise. And we have made sure that TESDA in its national TST plan of 2010 to 2015 has incorporated the basic principles of good housekeeping, or known as 5S. Green skills, your skills, are technical skills, knowledge, attitudes, and values needed in the workplace to develop, to live in, support sustainable social, economic, environmental outcomes for the business, industry, community. Offshore maintenance technicians, wind turbine technicians, low carbon architects, carbon traders, low carbon facilities manager, occupations, skills never heard in the recent past are now glaring us today. But let me share with you some hacks that could enlighten us on what green skills can be. I'm not advertising, but this is green skills on simple recycling. Usually we recycle plastic bottles for as vases, as utilities, but here plastic bottles are converted into plastic strings, which can be used in our households. And this is an example of the kids in the environment, at home, that they can do in order to make use of plastics into usable materials for home use.
Ladies and gentlemen, give a round of applause for Director General of TESDA, Secretary Irene M. Isaac.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. And let me add my words of welcome to our friends from Brunei, Indonesia, Malaysia, and of course to my friends from Mindanao. It's always a pleasure to be coming back and meeting all of you. A long time ago, when I was a lot younger, I used to go to meetings of the BIMP EAGA. The first one I attended was in Pontianak. And that was a long time ago. I think that was the second working group meeting, and it was held in Pontianak. And so this is coming home. I'm happy to be in our first TVET conference for BIMP. I know the three other members of the grouping calls it EAGA. It's only in the Philippines that we call it EAGA. And so it's always a pleasure to be working on undertaking of the BIMP EAGA. And this is the first TVET conference, and I know that the seeds of newer growth will come from this conference. And so here we are to learn from each other, but also to take the next steps towards working on cooperatively working on education that will further labor mobility in our neighborhood. I've always called BIMP as neighborhood, and so projects like this, I call it neighborhood projects. When I went to the meeting in Manado, again, that was a long time ago, it felt like going back to my history books. And so some people were kidding me when we landed in the airport in Manado. You have to kiss the ground because this is going back to history, because our shared history and the Philippine history says that before the Spaniards came to the Philippines, Manila was not the center of power. The center of power was, well, Zamboanga, because we were trading and we were working politically with the sultans and the datos of the south. So we were saying then, if the Spaniards did not come, then the capital of the Philippines perhaps is Zamboanga, because that was the strategic place at that time. So today, I was asked to present the ASEAN Qualifications Reference Framework as a model for working together or harmonizing the qualification standards of each and every country. This is the qualification framework of Indonesia. And so here you will see that there are 9 levels. There are 9 levels, and that the Indonesian qualification framework has to the left side the levels for formal academic education and formal vocational education and professional education in one side, and then here you have the non-academic side of it. You have the workers who can also be certified and gain qualification if they don't go to school through a process of recognition of prior learning. This one is the Malaysian's qualification framework. And so here you'll find that there are also 8 levels, and that you also have the levels being used by the Ministry of Human Resources, where they also support training programs and assessment and certification. Then you have the levels for the colleges and the polytechnics, where you have also the TVET certificate, the TVET diploma, the advanced diploma, as equivalent to what you find in the Ministry of Human Resource. And then, of course, you have the levels for lifelong learning for level 6, 7, and 8. And then, of course, you have higher education from the BS Honors to Masters to Doctorate. And so you see here that there is the lay of how qualifications are recognized in Malaysia out here. This is the Philippine Qualifications Framework. Also, we have 8 levels, and you have 5 TVET levels, and then you have the baccalaureate degree, the post-baccalaureate, and the doctoral and post-baccalaureate. You'll find that there are many arrows. The arrows denote the equivalences and the pathways. We do have what we call a ladderization program, where credits obtained in TVET can be credited towards a baccalaureate degree, basically through assessment and the attainment of the certificates are given credits in baccalaureate where it applies. We are platformed here on the senior high school. We have started the senior high school in the past. We used to have only grade 10, but now we have started with senior high school that adds grades 11 and 12 to our education system. There is the theoretical qualification. So you have 8 levels of the theoretical levels. The red boxes does not pertain to anybody's qualification. It is a neutral and theoretical model that will be used by all the 10 member states, uh, just to reference and say, my level 1 in this example, country A, has 9 levels. And so when they reference the qualifications, then country A perhaps will say that level 1 is the same as level 1 in the AQRF. Level 3 is equivalent to level 2, and level 4 is level 4, and level 5 is level 5. But then level 7 in country A is equivalent to level 6. Then you have country B, 1 to 1, and 2 to 2, and 3 to 4, and 4 to 5. Here, in most countries, the bachelor's degree is on level 6, and here you say that in country A, level 7 is level 6 in the theoretical model, and in country B, level 5 is equivalent to level 6. It looks like a very simple device, but then if you go to the process of referencing and understanding the country's qualification system, then it gets to be complicated.
To facilitate our open forum for the first part of the plenary session, we have the Provincial Director of the TESDA Compostela Valley, Ms. Arlene S. Bandong. Let's give her a round of applause.
So after listening to the expert inputs from our honorable speakers and presenters, we are now opening the session to answer questions on the floor. We have likewise provided you with sheets of paper in each of the table for those who would like their questions to be written. Just don't forget to put your contact numbers, and we will ensure you that we will respond to every single question that you will raise in this forum.
Let me introduce myself. My name is Nur Jimis. I'm IBTE Principal Satellites in Brunei Darussalam. So I have gone through on your slides, and it's very good in terms of the ASEAN qualifications frameworks, which is more focused on educations, which is from level 1 to level 8. So my question here is, how about the proportional qualifications? Have you thought about this? Because we have different type of proportionals, so we need to be aligned or ensure that which level they are. That is my questions.
It was a long series of discussions, both at the national and the regional, at the ASEAN level. There was the study of all the qualifications framework in all the 10 countries. And actually, that was at the same time that you were formulating the qualifications framework in Brunei. I remember that distinctly. And so there were suggestions on this and that in the task force. While there are 10 countries, there were about 40 people attending the task force meetings. It took 2 task force meetings to decide on the 8, because there was a suggestion on the 9 and the 10. There's even one country that has 11 levels, but in the end, we settled at 8. I think because in the end, people got tired of the discussion. And so we settled on most of the countries have 8 levels. So let's adopt 8. Let's start discussing on 8 and see later on if that needs to be changed.
In the Philippines, we have we had the maiden voyage of senior high. Did you find any relevance or significance that has somehow paved the way for, a better understanding of the qualifications framework vis-a-vis the other member states?
The discussions on the AQRF came about before we were able to finalize the structure of the senior high school. especially in the areas of STEM, because we had to work out our curriculum from grade 1 from kinder up to senior high school. And so while we were doing the AQRF, at the back of every Filipino's mind in the task force is how will this affect the qualifications vis-a-vis the components like mathematics, STEM. Uh, and so yes, it was good that we also have the senior high school, because our certificate for TVET, for example, wouldn't be as easily acceptable in the other member states because of the lack of 2 years. Example, uh, those who will go to work in Canada, for example, have to take some remedial courses in lieu of the 2 years of senior high school, because those who are evaluating the qualifications will find that this person, this Filipino, did not have senior high school and as such lack credentials on this, and this. So the effect of the senior high school is good for our referencing effort.
On the part of the senior high graduate, having had to finish senior high first before getting the competency and not necessarily pursuing the collegiate program.
In the 4 tracks, the basic difference for technical vocational education and training is that the same TVET you have in senior high school is the same TVET that you get post-secondary under the current arrangements, because it will not be up to 2022. The same NC1, NC2 that you get in TESDA is the same NC1, NC2 that you get in senior high school. Remember that the TVET track in senior high school is called employability track, so that you already get a qualification ahead of those who will go to college, so that they can be employed immediately. So that's NC1, NC2. The bearing of that is that they are ahead when they get to the higher levels of the NC. But then those who will go to college will, remember the arrow in the framework, will have to follow the requirements of the arrow. And so the biggest effort that we're doing now is to work with CHED on the ladderization law, because the ladderization the law says that tech voc qualifications will bring about credit units that will be acceptable anywhere when they go to higher qualifications. This is the work that TESDA and CHED are doing. The chairman of that committee, of that working group, is Director Biglete of CHED. And so within the year, there will be credit grants and there will be guidelines for credit transfers.
Which would you encourage, for example, for somebody to proceed to senior high, take the competencies through the VocTech track, or avail of short-term scholarships being offered by TESDA? Because this has been a question raised to us as private school administrators. And we are always asked this. It would be easier for most parents to send their kids under scholarship in a short-term TESDA program than to go through a 2-year senior high program with all the add-ons in there.
Some parents who would like to get faster employment for their children will go to the short-term track. And if they want to go to college later, they can go to bridging programs. But then, we Filipinos and we Filipino parents always want our children with a college degree. And so, it is always said that the parents will sell their last Carabao to send their children to college. So even if you offer employability track, the ambition will always be to get a bachelor's degree for their children. So if it is easier to get to a bachelor's degree because of the full components in senior high school, then sending to senior high school is a preferred option. We were following the real-time count of enrollment for senior high school. And the last time I was talking with the Ed, on June 30, we were looking at counts of the 1.4 million grade 10 finishers, more than a million enrolled in senior high school. And so that proves that as Filipinos would look at a bachelor's degree more favorably than earlier employment for Filipinos. Private education student financial assistance is a scholarship that's available. There is a package of bundled qualification that will run for 8 months to 1 year. There are 4 packages that can be enrolled in, and that we look at the costing parameters, and the scholarship package is more than what is offered in senior high school.
I'm Bel Torres from the Philippines, of course, but I'm representing Davao Chamber of Commerce this time. And there are several TechVox schools that are under chamber. And one of the considerations that we are looking into is the scholarship being provided by TESDA is something that you might want to look beyond. Why is this so? Because based on observations, most students would rather go to school with scholarship grants, and most of the private schools would just wait for these grants, and students won't enroll unless they have them. So these are few of the setbacks that some of the private schools are experiencing, those that are under our membership. And at the same time, based on the levels that has been presented, and obviously the free flow of service for the ASEAN integration, I was thinking if the skill sets provided by other countries, or let's assume equal competencies, but of course labor cost would be more affordable in some other countries. So there could be an imbalance in terms of, there could be a cost and effect thing. So how do we, come up with a balance, considering the things that we're looking at now? ASEAN integration, free flow of service, and number 2 is sustainability of private sectors, especially with the grants that are available right now.
And that you're right, it goes beyond scholarships and it goes beyond costs. That in the end, if we have to show credibility, because we have to show credibility for the qualifications issued by the Philippine schools for them to be recognized in the neighborhood, quality is beyond cost, and as such is beyond scholarship. That in the end, the comparability and the recognition of qualifications is in the quality of the provision and in the competencies of graduates. So you're right. It has to be beyond scholarships. So yes, we underscore what you said. This has to be beyond scholarships. That in the end, the referencing is not only in the levels and the units of competencies. The referencing is how well the programs have been provided and how well competent the graduates are.
how nice for the chamber to underscore the importance of scholarship with the relevance of their chamber member institutions vis-a-vis the requirements of chamber member industries. That's a good start. Uh, Under the spirit or within the spirit of self-policing, membership in the chamber, the relationship between companies and institutions, providers could be cemented or enhanced, if not ensured totally. Now, on the point of a scholarship, it is the scholarship is both a social product and what we want that it's a matter of for those really deserving to do higher qualifications. Because you pointed out that the markets are not just domestic but within the BIMP, EAGA, and even ASEAN. As a social reform product, we look at scholarship as a means to put those who are really needy to come up and receive a qualification. But we have to reckon with the fact that in a marketplace of competition, competitiveness of the country within the BIMP EAGA area and the ASEAN would have to be reckoned with somehow, sometime. And we're looking into it. That's the reason why TESDA of late came up with a bundling of qualifications so that higher level package of courses could be obtained for those who really are capable of staying a little longer and be competitive in the labor market. So that's it. The scholarship as a two-prong agenda item, social reform, and for those who are capable of obtaining higher qualifications. But thank you for self-policing the membership of the chamber between on the relationship of the labor market and the providers of technical training. Thank you, po.
I'm Wong from Malaysia, Ministry of Higher Education. I just would like to ask Madam Irene that what is the difference between AQRF and AQAF assurance? As AQAF, ASEAN Qualification Assurance Framework.
The referencing will have to carry with it quality assurance measure so that the referencing report will be acceptable and gain credibility. On the other hand, the quality assurance has its own discussions. And so the accreditation and the quality assurance becomes part and parcel of the referencing process. It is not different, but they are part, the assurance, the quality assurance is part and parcel of the referencing requirement.
The example of Canada requiring a remedial work before they would accept, prior to the K through 12 system. My question is, does the senior high school now, as it is, or as it is the curriculum is currently planned, will that be then accepted by Canada? Those extra 2 years, will that meet the requirements for securing a job in Canada or some other countries that have an issue with having 2 years less? And if it does meet the requirement, is it based on the content of those extra 2 years, or is it merely just based on the 2 years of additional time?
The answer is no. It is not a guarantee for acceptance of the educational requirement that the world has come to accept learning outcomes as the measure rather than the duration by which the training is conducted. True, in the first pass of evaluation, they look at the duration. But in TVET, the outcomes is important. Know that there are tests and assessments, practical and written, and so on. So the number of years is not a guarantee, but it always brings about a pass in the first stages of qualifications recognition. But in terms of guarantee of employment, no.
Considering that a major ingredient in the senior high school is the technical tracks. Then for the senior high school student who goes with the technical tracks in the senior high school, are they then going to have content-wise in those 2 extra years what is required then down the road? In other words, if they don't go with the academic track for senior high school, are they going to be able to meet the requirements of countries
In
like Canada?
senior high school, the agreement is that there will be the usual diploma for senior high school. That's how we call it in the Philippines. Diploma for senior high school that allows a person to go to college or to find employment. But there will also be national certificate for units of competencies that have been attained and can be shown to employers and as such say that Juan de la Cruz has attained the competencies of welding in the following 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in TVET, it is content in the Philippines, but the general education students will still have the time-bound certificates.
Maraming salamat po.
My question would be from our pinakagwapong bossing about green skills actually. We've been actually discussing about this, but if you try to check our curriculum, if you try to equate it in percentage, you would actually see that nandoon siya lang doon sa basic or common competencies. So I think green skills is deeper than we are actually trying to make our students and trainees to get. Like for example, how can you now equate those subjects, for example, the ecosystem? Has this been discussed? Has this been put in the basic and common competencies? So how would you now equate it on the basis of the competencies? Just to make sure to ingrain this to our trainees and to our trainers. Very, very important. So I see in your presentation the different indicators, and I would like you to expound on this because we wanted from the TESDA sector, from the TESDA, how big the scope of green skills in our training regulations. And in that aspect as well, I would like to ask as well, if there is any green research, quote-unquote, fund.
Thank you, Director Tarhata. I would like to attack the second question first. Thank you for putting in funds for the green research. Okay, we're hoping, yes, thank you. We're hoping that in your realignment of your budget, even the TechVoc institutions would recognize the need to put in funds for the green research. Thank you for that. Yes. Second, on the first question, while it is implied that these green skills are in the basic competencies, it is very primary consideration to look into the core competencies and look at the green content. Remember, just a year and a half ago, we improved on the training regulation format or the framework that instead of the age-old underpinning knowledge and skills, it is now explicitly identified the required knowledge, skills, values, and attitude. And as I tried to explain earlier, in the crafting of the new competency standards and the training regulations, we looked at 4 safety considerations: to the worker, to the customer, to the tools and equipment, and the safety for the environment. And we are all the training regulations that had been so crafted lately and all the training regulations subjected for review carry with them the environment component. And you will notice that the review of the training regulations result more often than not an expansion of the content and with particular attention on that slot for environment. We're not talking here of subjects, but we're talking here of more learning activities pointed at such contextual learnings that have to be imbibed by the learners. And you're right, the trainers would have to be very particular with crafting new sets of curricula, particular with this learning activities, so that the content becomes deeper and more explicit.